Good, there we are. Hi June, hi Denise.
Hello Andy.
Hi Andy.
We're just set up in the group now, so there we go. So it's great to see you both. So hi everybody, thanks for tuning in. By the very nature of the discussion tonight, it's going to be we're going to be discussing some challenging topics and thoughts. So obviously if this is going to be a difficult listen for you, then maybe catch up with it on catch up, so you can dip in and out how you want to. But we've got June and Denise here tonight, both of which have had training in bereavement and are very knowledgeable on it. And June runs the bereavement support service for Association of Interdogs. What we will do is at the end of the chat today, in the group, in this thread with this chat, and also in the group as a separate post, we'll share lots of different resources that are there for bereavement support within the UK and Ireland. If you know of services and support in your part of the world that you want to share with the group, please do that, so we can just build up a bit of a resource. And then once we've collected a fair bit, we can put that in as I think it'd be good to put it as a file in the section, wouldn't it, Denise, in the file section. So that's always there. And this is a topic, of course, that, you know, by the mere default of being a companion pet, a companion animal caregiver, that we're going to experience loss as part of that process of caring for another. So we will all have had experiences here, but we wanted to try and look at things in a very accessible and compassionate way today, and just work through some things. And hopefully, as we discuss some of the different aspects, there will be elements that you, the viewer, the listener, can relate to, and hopefully take some comfort from. I think that's important for us. One of the first places to start with, I think, is as we kind of go through the many different types of grief. That's the way how we're going to start things first, before we start thinking about some ways that we can help to deal with and cope with the bereavement. I think the big thing, one of the big things, of course, is the perception of the loss of a companion animal to those around us, you know, whether that's from in the workplace, sometimes family and friends even. And that's a good place to start, June.
It is. We were talking very briefly earlier about how appropriate this discussion is for following on the discussion about emotional truth, because actually we all experience grief completely differently. Yes, there are certain types of grief, and yes, we know that there is a process that we might go through, probably several times, but actually how we experience it is our emotional truth. So I think it's lovely that this follows on from what you've been posting on the group previously.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, and just that recognition that everybody's experience of loss, bereavement, going through the grieving process is valid.
It is valid. You know, what I feel might be slightly different to what you feel. Obviously, there are cultural differences as well, which we may have to take into account. You know, some cultures don't value our dogs and pets quite the same way as we do. So we do need to be mindful of that when we are talking to clients in particular, or to other people, obviously within this group as well. We are an international group now, really, aren't we? So we have to bear in mind that there are differences. But we could definitely go on to talk about the different types of grief that we all experience, and how sometimes we can get stuck in particular parts of that grief cycle. I know in the past I've been stuck and needed a little bit of a push to get out of it, a little bit of help. And I think that's what we need to understand, is that it's okay to ask for help if you feel that you are becoming overwhelmed. And it is very easy for us to become overwhelmed, because our dogs means pets in general, but our dogs we're talking about today means so much to us. We'll go on to talk about that a little bit more, but yes, so we need to actually think about everyone's experience is completely different. And if we start from that premise, we can have empathy, we can possibly talk about our experiences as well. But for most people, talking about their experience would be the most help. What about you?
Having
Agree with
that
that,
safe,
Denise?
and having that safe outlet is so important, I think, because as you say, when we do get a bit stuck, the more awareness we can give to people recognizing why they might be stuck in that part of the process can be really helpful. And especially for people to find a way of navigating their own way through a lot of the mixed emotions that we have, because we have so many. And companion animals, dogs specifically, we're talking about in the group, really, they represent so much more to us than just that companion aspect. You know, we end up projecting a lot on that. Yeah, so that great connection there about the emotional truth, June. Denise, I think it'd be good for us to maybe go through some of the different identified
various types. Yes, I agree. I think the types of grief are very important for people to recognize that there isn't just one type, because then when we look at the 5 stages, people can find and identify where they're at. So did I freeze there?
You did a little
very
bit,
briefly.
you're back with us now.
Okay. Right, so obviously the first one, I'm not going to read this, I'm not going to come out with these in any particular order, but obviously the first one is going to be the normal grief that most people will actually feel. It's kind of divided into 3 aspects: the emotional, the physical, and the behavioral reactions that everybody at some point in their life is going to experience grief. How we deal with it is up to us. And that's where we come in, is like if you get stuck,
I do think but that's very important to recognize that it is physical as well as emotional and behavioral. You know, if you think about how the vagus nerve is involved in the autonomic system, we do have physical symptoms from those. And if we don't deal with some of those, they do become, or they can damage us.
Yeah.
You know, we do need to think about how we can help ourselves if we can.
And like another one is masked grief, where we're suppressing it because we feel we can't let it out in case the floodgates open. It never stops. So we suppress it. But unfortunately, what happens there is, by suppressing that, like with dogs, by stopping one behavior, we need an outlet. It's going to come back out, hindering and impairing our normal everyday functions.
And I don't think we always realize that we are masking it, that we are suppressing it. We think we're dealing with it, but actually when you start talking about it, you realize you haven't, and things start flooding out. So yeah, you do need to be aware that you could be just delaying things.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll go through it eventually. I think it will hit eventually.
And this one is very relevant, especially for people with multi-pet household, multi-species household. It's cumulative grief.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you lose one animal, and then shortly after another one goes, and then another one goes, and it's the build-up. It's a grief overload.
Yes.
And you get to that point where you just can't take it anymore. And it can happen with humans as well. With a husband and wife, one passes away, the other just can't cope. In the old days, it used to be they died of a broken heart.
Yes.
You know, it is this overload for the survivors. So yeah, cumulative grief is a very big one for pet owners.
And I think that's a clear indication that there is a physical impact, not just emotional.
Then there's also kind of this distorted grief, where you get this intense and extreme reaction to the loss. Your kind of self-destructive behavior, anger. You don't know how to manage or comprehend what's going on. So you kind of, everything's distorted. You're going to lash out for, like a reactive dog. You don't know what to do. You're going to find something else to do in place to relieve this tension that you're under. So that's distorted grief. Then there's, I'm not going to say my favorite, but this is one of the biggest ones. I went through this with, this is how this ties in with the 5 stages, actually. I went through this with my own father. I had the denial that I knew there was something wrong. Then I had the anger when I got the diagnosis. Then I had the bargaining, like maybe they got it wrong. Then I had, you know, the whole, after it was kind of the depression. There was nothing I could do. And then a trauma kicked me out of the depression, and I was able to accept. But accepting didn't mean I was okay about what was going on. It meant that I had no choice. I had to function. Somebody had to function. Somebody had to get through. And that is anticipatory grief. And that is a huge one with that.
Yeah. And we do get a lot of that.
Because if we get a bad diagnosis and we know it's coming to end of days, yeah. And what do? We cry, we spoil the dog, we make a bucket list, we do this, this, and that. Great. But the biggest mistake we do make is dwelling on it too much and missing those precious last moments we have where we can make memories.
And I think we also have a potential to spoil some of those last days as well, because we know what, you know, dog's superpower is knowing exactly what we're thinking and feeling. Yeah. And we don't want that tainting their last few days. So you want to be able to celebrate with them and enjoy them. So
instead of going for a walk on, oh, this is my last walk. This is my last, this, you know, that type of thinking is just. Yeah.
And especially if it goes on for some time, you know, sometimes cancer diagnosis can be 12 months, you know, it's maybe cleared up now, you've had some treatment, but you know it'll be back and you're waiting for it. And you try not to spoil that period of those extra days, weeks, months that you get with your dog.
And then we have another one that I feel hits dog owners as well, or anybody who has any living beings that they love. It's complicated grief. It's you're struggling to move on. The process you're feeling, everything is dragging you down. And these bouts of depression and anxiety are just getting longer and longer. And you're just afraid to talk to somebody because it's gone on for so long. Complicated grief is one of those that if you find you're stuck in that rut for 6 months or more, you are in a serious downward spiral. And, you know, if you feel that's where you're at, shout out, get help. You know, that's where we are with that.
Yeah, that's definitely a damaging place to be.
Yeah. Then there's kind of
if I just chip in there, I just think just listening to you go through those, Denise, it just goes to show how much there is to navigate through the bereavement process, and which is difficult enough already without all the extra kind of barriers that are there because it's a pet or a companion animal rather than a human. It's something like we were talking about at the beginning, but and we it's not like many of us start pre-bereavement already being in a really settled place. We will have other stuff that's going on for us, other pressures, other stresses in our lives, and then this is just one more. And you talked earlier about that kind of masked grief, which can come a lot, especially if those around us we perceive aren't going to be interested in hearing us express it. And we can get alone in grief very easily. And I think that's such a shame. And we've had it we've got a neighbour nearby, an older lady who lost her dog recently, and her daughter's very pragmatic, and it's okay, mummy, we'll get another one, and all this sort of thing. But that other one wouldn't be that dog. So when we just bumped into her and we got talking to her, she just broke down in tears because she had a chance to talk and express about her life with her dog.
So do you feel that was a real delayed process, that she'd thrown herself into work, get through all the tasks? And often that happens with family, you know, particularly with parents. I think you'd agree with me, Denise, that, you know, when your father died, you've got so many things you have to do that you just focus on these things. And actually, sometimes it's 12 months later that the grief starts to hit you. Maybe when you are approaching those milestones, that first Christmas or the first birthday, when they've gone. And we definitely do that. And again, that's pretty damaging to the body, to the mind.
Yeah, I mean, we do that a lot with humans, especially like I had 2 parents I had to deal with all the paperwork on. We're still going through some of the paperwork a few years on. And I have a feeling that it's not going to hit me until the very end.
No, I think that's right.
I sign on the dotted line. With pets, we don't have all the paperwork to go through, but there's still no reason why it's not going to hit you at a later stage, because you see a dog that looks like them, or just something pops into your mind.
Yeah.
And
so
you
there's almost
forget.
I can hear myself saying, you know, that somebody's got to be the strong one, somebody's got to do this, somebody's got to do that, and you're just delaying.
You function.
Yes.
You literally function.
One of the best things when my father passed, one of the nurses at the hospice said to me, "Don't try and be strong for your mother, because she needs to be your mother." And that was really great advice, because I would have been, I'd have thought, right, I've got to stay strong for mom and compose myself, because I've got to look after mom. And she needed me to be vulnerable so she could
look after you.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing for all of us when we have that loss. We shouldn't have to try and be strong for anybody.
No, and I think if you do, you miss out on those last conversations, moments that you can have with the loved one. I think when my brother died, it was definitely let's talk, even though he was, you know, lying in his bed and he was about to pass away. We said some things that we hadn't said to each other before.
It's so important to get closure.
Yeah. It is.
Closure is a huge thing, and it's the same with pets. When we lose a pet, you know, we need that closure.
Yeah. And that cumulative grief, because you and I, Denise, both experienced the loss of our parents quite close to each other. My father went first, and then it was my mother a few years later. You had your mother, and then of course your father. And especially with my mother, I always think, well, this can't be happening again. You know, so you have the anticipatory grief when she had a diagnosis, and then, like you say, you're thinking, well, this can't be right. There must be this, there must be that. And you're scrabbling around for things to try and make sense of it. So all these different things that we're talking about, it doesn't mean that necessarily you'll just have one aspect of that grieving.
No,
there can be multiple.
Exactly, because I know when my mum died, there was this shock, because I remember I was texting you, Andrew, and I said, oh, I think you were asking how things are going with my partner, just come out of quadruple bypass surgery. And I said, oh yeah, I'll be on later, because we had an Into Dogs meeting or something else. I'll be on later. I'm out in the hospital. Mom's not well. It's not looking good. And then, like, I think it was about 10-15 minutes later, I just texted Andy back to say, yeah, things really aren't looking good. She just died. And it was like, wow, that was just not what anybody expected.
That's a trauma, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then to have to face my dad, who had dementia and who was plateauing, and he was getting worse and getting worse. I mean, that just knocked him for six. So I was trying to kind of handle one grief, get my head around everything, and then handle a dementia patient, literally, because she was his carer, all at the same time, complete with looking after my partner who'd had quadruple bypass. So it was like, everything is a blur. I remember saying to Andy at one stage, I don't like Mondays, because every Monday I get a phone call and something's wrong. It was every Monday. It was like, oh my goodness, it was the doctors, it was the solicitor, it was this, it was that. But we got through. We got through.
You do.
But it just goes to show that your brain can compartmentalize, that you can have the anticipatory grief, that there's no way out of this for Dad. He's going to pass away. There's nothing I can do. And there is nothing I can do. Instead of getting down about that, let's focus on what I can do and give him a happy few days. Focus on what we have now, rather than where it's heading. Yeah. And then there was also this other grief that I wanted to have from my mom, but I couldn't find the time. Yeah. Which sounds terrible, but I felt I couldn't find the time, because if I took time out, I'd drop the ball. I wouldn't be able to look after him. I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to do that. So yeah, I'd say when everything comes to closure this year, I'll probably take a few weeks
and I think
just to
that's important. Well, we'll come round to talking about coping mechanisms, but I think that's a good one to mention there, that you actually took some time out. And I think that's vital.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about secondary loss, have we, as well, where sometimes loss of a pet will bring a secondary loss, in that the rest of their life has gone. And maybe an elderly person would think that I'm never going to have another dog. So not only is it the loss of a dog, but it's actually the loss of a lifestyle as well. So I think there's that we need to think about. Sometimes that's important. I mean, actually, you know, we use some of our dogs as stooge dogs with other, you know, to help heal other dogs. If that dog dies and you suddenly don't have that stooge dog in your life, in your business, it's also can impact other things as well. So that's where it's almost like cumulative thing. It's actually secondary, but you know, it is cumulative in some ways, because you're grieving the loss of your lifestyle as well.
I think this is important.
It is. I think all grief is a loss that you're, I mean, even when COVID started, people didn't realize that this down emotional slump they're falling into was a form of grief.
Yes.
They're grieving the lifestyle they were used to.
Yes.
But I mean, we also have some dangerous griefs. People fall into like exaggerated grief, where everything is like hyper.
Yes.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Am I back?
You're back.
You're back.
Right. We have like exaggerated.
Oh dear.
Just think of an angst teenager. Everything's amplified.
Yes.
You can't cope. You can't cope. You don't want to cope. There's more intensity. There's self-harm. There's self-destructive behavior, substance abuse, nightmares, just generally being disruptive, because again, it's a displaced behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
We lost you again there, Denise. Sorry.
Oh, she's gone again. Okay, well, shall we move on?
Am I back?
Yes, you're back. You're back.
Am I back? Am I back? Right. Then we have chronic grief. Again, it's these intense reactions of loss that just won't subside, and it's not letting you push through the stages that we're going to come back to in a moment.
Yeah.
Then we have this delayed grief that we already touched on.
Yeah.
We have a traumatic grief, which is
traumatic grief is, I mean, for example, I did suffer a trauma. Yes, you're back. A traumatic grief I have experienced, where a dog just passed away on his walk. That was it, 4-year-old Labrador. There's no rhyme or reason in that at all. And I have to say that pushed me into another stage of prolonged grief. That actually, I that's when one of the reasons or one of the occasions I thought I'd got stuck. I couldn't get out of that, because I definitely moved on to depression in some ways because of another type of grief that we'll talk about, the big E for us, I think. And we're ready to talk about that one, but
because like with traumatic grief, there's also this survivor's guilt or bereavement guilt experience. Yeah. Then we have the biggest one of all, the disenfranchised grief, where you just don't get heard. Your feelings are not validated by owners because it was only a dog, it was only a mouse, it was only a horse, it was only a hamster, because people just don't get it.
No. And again, that's employers can be some of the worst people for that. You know, that they expect you to be able to go back to work the next day. I think it's getting better in some of the big organisations, but certainly 20, 30 years ago, that phrase that keeps ringing is it was only a dog, you know, why are you not over it now? And that is not only hurtful, it's damaging, it's upsetting, it pushes you back into all sorts of those other categories of grief that we've talked about, the prolonged, the disguised, the delayed in some ways, because you just try and carry on with work, and you then experience it 6 months later, which again is just not understood. Well, it was 6 months ago, you know, have you not go over it yet? You know, those words, we don't get over these things.
That's why it's important that we're going through some of these different recognized types of bereavement, types of grief, sorry. Because like you said there, June, you know, you could have a situation where, I had a client a little while ago whose dog got run over, so it was very instant, and there's so many levels there for her that she's having to try and process and work through, and it's affected her hugely, because you were talking there about the guilt side of things, Denise, and the what ifs, what if I'd have done this, what if I'd done that, and it eats away. And then to try and go to work and
Yep.
function in that state is challenging at the very least. But so it's not just even if people are trying to look at it in a very linear binary way of, well, it's just the loss of your dog. There are so many elements and so many layers that are there to compound that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the other one, that when we say collective grief, it's when this mass trauma has happened that affects, say 9/11. How many people did that affect? But if you think back to one of the rescues, was it Manchester? A few years back, went on fire, and the animals.
Fire, yeah.
That again, when you look at it in terms of our animals, and even the that gun dog place recently, where during the storm, the fence, all the dogs got electrocuted. I mean, that
it's appalling.
Everybody that works there, everybody who's part of the family, that is collective grief. You're all going through it at once, and that can have a very knock-on effect as well. Everybody's miserable, and you're just feeding off each other's misery. I'm not saying everybody has to go in and be happy, but you know, that is the time when there's enough people all getting stuck in that rut at one time. It's important to identify and be able to get somebody in to help to move on, because there's no shame in that.
No.
You know, you just can't be. Then there's the inhibited grief, where you just really, you're not showing any outward signs. You know, you're just not showing it. You can't show it. You don't know how to show it. But at the same time, you're personally stuck in that rut and you're not moving through your stages. Then we have the abbreviated grief, which this happens a lot with pet owners, when a member of the family or a well-meaning friend jumps in, where the recovery is seen as being fast because they suddenly, oh, well, it's just a dog. Here's another one. And it looks like your last one. And the person doesn't have time to grieve. And then it's, my last dog did this, my last dog didn't do that. And as we all know, if somebody suddenly hands you a dog or a puppy, you're going to fall in love with it and you're going to do your best. You're not going to hand it back.
No.
But it's one of the worst things anybody can do to you, because you're not ready for that. And then all of a sudden, you know, it's filling a void. And you're having good days and you're having bad days. When you're out and about with the puppy, you're having the good days and everybody thinks you're over it.
Yeah.
When you're not, you're just accepting.
Yes. Yeah. You're still delaying the process.
Yeah.
Plus you're concentrating on something else. You've been distracted by someone else. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the abbreviated grief is one that people do. I find it happens an awful lot with people with pets. You know, because somebody just gets it into their head, will just replace it and the person will be fine. Sadly, it's one of the, my personal opinion is that is one of the worst things you could do for somebody who is grieving.
Yes.
Let them grieve.
Yes.
Simply let them grieve and let them get a new pet in their own time.
Yeah.
And of course, there's absent grief. That's the last one, as far as I know. I think I went through 16. But absent grief that's a big one, because it's pretty much the first on the stages as well. That's total denial and shock that anything has happened. So you literally live in your own little world for a while. And that again can be detrimental to your health, physically, emotionally, mentally, behaviorally. So, you know, so do you want to move on to the 5 signs, so that people can actually see how they relate to all these different types of grief that people can go through?
Yeah, and I think you said earlier, the important thing is to understand that it's non-linear. We can come in and out. It hits us in waves. And out of those 5 signs, I think you can keep on going, not always round in circles. You just dip in and out. You know, it's that ball in the box, and it hits the button, and it really sometimes doesn't hit all of those denial.
And I think acceptance is one of the hardest ones.
Yeah,
it's one of the most hurtful ones, because you go out somewhere, you've accepted, you're dealing with it, and you go out and you have a laugh, or you're chatting, or you pet another dog, and then somebody says something Well-meaning.
Bam, you feel
Well-meaning,
guilty,
but
yes,
oh, you're
yes,
over it now, are you?
yes.
It's like, no,
No.
I'm still in recovery.
Then you start to feel guilty that you were laughing, you were smiling,
Yes.
you were enjoying yourself, and
Yeah. Or
actually
you petted another dog.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be doing that. And
Yeah.
it's, again, that's one of the things that I would say you can get stuck in. I got stuck in counting the number of days and hours that my dog had passed away.
And
And
it
that
can set you right back to anger.
And I would know the minute, you know, if somebody asked me, I would know the exact number of hours it had been. And you think, that's just focusing on something else to keep my brain occupied, to actually avoid. So I think I'd moved out of denial at that stage. But
I think a lot of us as well, we've all had that disenfranchised grief growing up. If we're all of a certain age that have grown up with animals, we've all experienced that at some point. And I think now what's beautiful about, like, Facebook is good and bad, but I think what's beautiful now is that we're looking at the emotionality of animals. We're recognizing them. Like, we've all known they're sentient. We love them. Yeah. But now more and more people are identifying them with being sentient. They're appreciating these living, breathing creatures have emotions, they have feelings. We love them, and they're a huge loss. So people are being a bit, I feel bad for pet owners because they generally don't have the support that pet trainers or behaviourists or dog walkers or any of us guys would have, because you know yourself, we can be screaming at each other one night on Facebook going, I don't agree with you. And then one of us suddenly posts, my dog, my whatever passed away. And we all come in together and go, we're here.
But even that can put some pressures on this, can't it? So when my last dog died, I wanted to do some sort of tribute, but I couldn't do it for a few days. Yeah. But I did feel the pressure to do it because, you know, I thought, well, people need to know. I've extended family, if you like, need to know. And that's one way of doing it without bringing everybody. But you want it to be right. So there is pressure to get it right for Facebook.
There is, and sadly, everybody rallies around for this first shoot. It's like a human funeral. Everybody rallies around till the funeral's over.
And I think the problem with Facebook, though, is it pings throughout the day and night, and it just, you can't get away from it unless you turn. So that's why I said earlier, I really admire you for saying you need a break, and take a break. Switch off the phone, switch off the laptop.
Yeah, because I think what happens, I think the worst time for me personally was when we were going through all the funerals and making the arrangements and everybody was there. There's all this excitement, well, not happy excitement, but there was busy time, activity, and then they were gone. And that's when you have that downtime to actually think. Yeah. So and the same works virtually as well, because as you say, the phone's going ping, 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 and everybody's going, big hugs, we're so sorry, is there anything we can do? No, there's not. I've seen Pet Cemetery. So, you know, I know people, sadly, they don't know what to say. Some things they say, I mean, if you put it out there that your beloved has just died, you got to be ready for what people are going to say, because they don't know what else to say. No. And that can hurt as well. And then it's like everybody forgets because everybody moves on. Yeah. You're stuck. Your world has stopped moving. Everybody else is still moving. Yeah. And then you fall back into the anger of the stages. It's horrible, kind of catch-22 a lot of the time.
So the 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, which I think for me includes guilt in that segment, one in particular, depression.
That is the time that you suddenly pray to God, Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, whoever is going to help. Yeah. Yeah.
And then acceptance. But as you quite rightly say, you can move out of acceptance back into anger at any time. In fact, all of them.
Definitely, you just bounce from one to the other.
Yeah, because on that one, both my parents say they passed away quite a while ago now. My father's about 10 years, my mother about 8 years, and my husband works at the the hospice where they both passed on, and they're having a 40-year anniversary at the moment. So they're having display boards with loads of pictures there of people who've been cared for by the place, been sent in by relatives. Kieran sent in some pictures of mum and dad, which I knew about. But when I went to see the exhibition and saw my parents on that wall, that was very different. It's very profound. But a lot of stuff just comes back. It just does. You have those moments because your brain's kind of, we don't really move on. We do move forwards though over time, and we find different ways of being able to cope, and our brain puts things into the places they need to be. But then something will happen quite randomly, which will just throw that up in the air again.
Definitely, I liken it to walking through a landmine field, and you can be walking along. Sometimes you can be gingerly because you've actually just been blown up by one a little bit further down the lane, and then you hit another one. And it surrounds you. You literally are in a cloud of grief, anger, denial, all of it, and it subsides again. You manage to walk through. I see the road in between of them as acceptance, but you keep on hitting those, and that's that. We've published before the box that it's. I always see it as a balloon, that the balloon deflates over time. But it still hits that the button at the bottom, which is where our grief lies. So it stays there. One of the analogies I like is the plant pot, where basically you've got a plant growing in a pot, and your grief is the same size throughout all of this, but actually your plant grows. So the grief in proportion decreases, and then your plant becomes a garden. And your grief is still there, exactly the same size, but your garden is bigger and you can move around a lot. That's when you're getting back to normal, if you like, if there is ever a normal. We all have a different normal after we've had a big loss like that.
That's important. I was just going to say the readjustments that you talk about there are really important, because it is different. And, especially if you've had if you've only had the one dog, and that dog's not with you, like Denise talked about earlier, there's all sorts of aspects of your daily routine and your rituals that will shift. Yep. And this is that thing about adapting to that. And definitely when we get stuck with some parts of the grieving process, this is why it's really important, like Denise said earlier, to reach out and look for that kind of bereavement support, because often there are other unresolved aspects that are not, some of them are directly attributed to the actual loss. Others are kind of one step removed from that, but they're connected through other ways, and it can get very layered, can't it, over time?
Yeah, it is layered. And like everything, depression can come in waves as well. We can feel we're getting better, and then we go back down again into the spiral. So
especially if we feel my life was better when I had that dog with me. And,
I think that's true. And I do sympathise with those people that, all of a sudden they've lost their dog. They don't go out for a walk. When they go to the cafe or pub where they've normally taken their dog, it sits quietly underneath the table. Everything is different.
How many people don't kind of, when you have a dog, you go out and people see the dog, talk to you. Yes. How many people are alone?
Yeah.
And when they lose that companionship, they've lost their life, what they perceive as their lifestyle, and it's very hard to get up.
And there's their support group in some ways. When they have a dog, they might meet up with a particular group of walkers. Do they invite them to go with them again? Still after they've lost their dog. And it's very sad if everything changed.
Yeah, I remember with my parents, why did I get up in the mornings? Because of my dog. He was my one stable he was my companion. He was my constant through everything. What do I do when he goes? Who do I get up for? I don't know if anybody's seen Afterlife.
No.
The Ricky Gervais show. It was his dog that got him through the loss of his wife.
Yes.
It was a fantastic show.
I think that's definitely true. My mum had Alzheimer's, but for a long time she managed in her own flat, and that was the dog. Okay, sometimes the dog got fed twice, sometimes he skipped a meal, but you know, on the whole he was well looked after and I saw him every day. But that kept her going, that kept her in the present much more than anything else could have done.
Yeah,
they mean so much to us, don't they? It's multifaceted.
They do, and I think
I don't think people realise how much they do actually mean, or what. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I think that June's made a really important point there about when we step back and consider what our dogs might actually be fulfilling for us on top of the actual companion side of things. There are some truths there for us to learn actually about other things, and that's part of the process, I think, of when we have the loss of that dog, about thinking about, well, what do I need to look at for myself here to find my own way of filling some of these things that actually my dog did for me?
Yep.
Rather than thinking I can't do it because I haven't got my dog here. It's just looking at things and getting the support to do that. I think we've got 20 minutes here. I think
I have some books. I have some books I would recommend for anybody going through anything that are really, really worth looking at. I can put the links down on the page if anybody wants, or I can just kind of show you them now.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely have the links.
And I've got the links to the places that I've managed to find in the UK as well, and obviously you've got some as well.
We'll have the book titles as part of this bit then, really, because I think it's really important that we that you both share. You said earlier, June, about moving on to some conversation about some coping strategies and some of the things that we can think about. And one little input I just want to put on that is the notion of anticipatory grief, and actually what a gift that can be actually sometimes, to give us the time to think about some of the things that we want to do, because we're already there's been some studies on the human psychology side of things that the anticipatory grief, that actually if we have an awareness to it, it can actually help with the a better move to acceptance after the loss, because we have a chance to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, I don't think it totally it makes it easier when it finally comes. It's even though you know it's going to happen, and you can know for many years that, you know, the life is going to be shortened, particularly for humans, but it still doesn't make the loss when it actually happens any easier. But I do think you're right, it makes acceptance come a little bit quicker, because you've already begun to accept it throughout that period. So yeah, definitely. And I think if that doesn't happen for you, then it's probably worth seeking out friends, family, empathetic people that you can talk to, or if necessary, that's when you're going to need to talk to a counsellor of some sort. Those, you know,
that's like when you're stuck in the whole complicated grief system or scenario.
And I think you've got to give yourself permission to feel whatever you want to feel. I think that's probably, even though it might come in waves, don't ignore the fact that today you feel down about things, and there are some things that you can do to help. We know that, you know, obviously exercise is prescribed for depression. We know that singing can lift our mood, that sort of thing. We know that, you know, having some fun can lift our mood. Whether you can force yourself to do it when you're feeling down is another matter. But there are things we can do that will help. Talked earlier about the vagus nerve being involved in trauma and flight and fight and everything else. So, you know, we know a lot about that as animal practitioners. So we can do things that will make us feel better, same as we would for our dogs.
And I think that's how so many people fall into the self-harm, the self-destructive behaviours, substance abuse, kind of restless sleep, just not being themselves, is because they don't know who to go to, or how to talk about it, or they're embarrassed to talk about it. That's why I love finding various books, because it's kind of a self-help thing, that it's just that little step. Like, if you're not ready to speak out, how about read up about it and see from there where you want to go.
And it's
private.
Yes, it
That's the
is.
main thing. Yeah.
And there are some, I mean, I love the cruise website that gives some fantastic guidance and information and signposting to some of the services that are available there as well, as do, you know, on the pet bereavement side of things, the Blue Cross is really good. They and even, you know, there are lots of other places that you can get help from, which I will share that. But, you know, for me, cruise and the Blue Cross are probably.
And the Blue Cross is called the Ralph site.
The Ralph site,
just
yeah.
so if anybody's Googling it, they.
Yeah. There'll be a list put up later on with some links on that, so that's fine.
Okay.
One of the things we haven't talked about for me is actually helping our pets when a pet dies as well. I think I've always allowed my existing pets to see the body of. I bring my dogs home after euthanasia if they've had to be euthanized, and I sounds really weird, I know, but I put them in a room where the access is open. I might go in there and sit with them at times. My dogs will come in, they'll sniff and be able to process the fact that they've gone. And I swear that dogs understand death and they're not looking for them after that. Don't know whether you've experienced any of that, but.
Well, not being funny, but it's a bit like closure for humans as well, with an open coffin in the living room. Or with the Irish, it's a wake that goes on for like a week.
Well, that's what I was brought up on as well. And
you know, sometimes
weird,
you just need that.
And I think the dogs need it as well. I can't imagine what it would be like to have the dog just leave and not know what's happened to it.
I get that all the time with my own dog because I take on training puppies and they go every 12, 18 months. And there is a grieving process for me and my dog.
Yeah.
Because I get these puppies at 8 weeks old and I absolutely adore them. If I didn't adore them, I wouldn't be able to do my job. And then I hand them over. What helps is that, to me, in my mind, they don't die. They're still puppies. They didn't die. They're still puppies.
And they're doing a job.
Yeah, but to my dog, he has no idea where they've gone. No. And he does grieve. So, I mean, that's another huge thing that I'm very aware of. Even in my training with it, like, you'll find that with multi-dog households, actually, you don't bring them all out together. They need their own time. They need time apart. They need to be able to have time apart, appreciate time apart, enjoy walks apart, so that if something does happen to one, they're not so dependent. They're going to follow on. And then you have your cumulative grief, where you've lost one, followed by another, followed by another. So the domino effect, as I call it. But can I just say, this is a beautiful book by somebody called, a lady called Jenny Smedley, and it's called Pets Have Souls.
Yep. I've seen that one. I haven't read it, to be fair.
It's quite an old one, but it's actually a lovely one. Yeah. She talks about how animals can sense your feelings. They can see into the spirit world. They can, you know, it's about animal communication for those that really just want to kind of know their pets are doing well. And, you know, not everybody is science-based. Some people want to see more of this soul retrieval. I mean, look, Dr. Isla Fisher has beautiful courses. You know, this is a really good book, so I'll put the link for that. This one is, I couldn't find the one I wanted to show you, so I'm going to show you this one. It's the Grief Recovery Handbook, and it's by John James and Russell Friedman. This one was Grisha Stewart recommended this to me because she was going through a trauma just before I was, and she recommended this to me, and I found it was absolutely fantastic. But these two guys have the Grief Recovery Handbook for pet bereavement. That's why I wanted to show it to you, so you'd remember the name of it, Grief Recovery. They do one for pet bereavement as well. It's available on Amazon. This one was one I was given after the loss of a parent, and it's called Resilient Grieving, and it's exactly what you were talking about earlier. Oh, I don't know if you can see that. Resilient Grieving by Lucy Hone, Dr. Lucy Hone. Lucy wrote this book after her daughter was tragically died in a car crash with her friends and the family's friends, family type of thing. But what I love about this is that it gives you permission. If you're having a day where you're feeling down, it gives you permission to just go, yeah, you know, that's okay. I can just take that day. I can be down. I can grieve.
Yeah.
And the more you do that, the more you take 5-10 minutes a day to cry, grieve, whatever, you will find the time between those grief periods gets longer and longer and longer. And it's not because you've stopped grieving, it's because you're more accepting and you're kind of, the dilution has come in. It's like if you get a jug of water and you put intensive ink into it, the grief is so tight, and then it suddenly dissolves and expands and just fills the water jug over time. And that's why this one is so important. The resilient grief is so important. Then for anybody who is going through something, I cannot recommend this highly enough. I think everybody in the dog world knows this book, Remember Me by Eileen Anderson. Anybody who has experienced dementia or Alzheimer's in humans will know same happens with the dogs, only it's accelerated. Like everything, it's accelerated with the dogs because they live a shorter lifespan. They live life to the fullest. But this really helps with anticipatory grief. You know, it's a really good one because remember, same with humans, the recognition has gone. They're a shell that you still love, and you know somewhere inside they probably love you too. They just can't find that little piece in their brain that says, I remember you.
Yeah.
So, and the last one I have handy is this beautiful one by Denise Fenzi, Conversations for Reiki. She started writing this when her dog was ill, and she had beautiful conversations online that you can't read without crying. So do not read this book without a box of tissues. It's funny and it's heartbreaking. And it's a beautiful conversation, that closure you want with your pet, that you know you've said everything you ever wanted to say to them. So they're my top 5 recommendations of books for anybody grieving, anticipatory grief, struggling with grief, or want to know what's happened next. So we're covering souls, we're covering dementia, we're covering how to get closure. So I will put links up for all of those for you.
That's good.
Right.
What I noticed with that is obviously most of the advice we're giving and handing out is human and pet. So for us, we don't live in that world now where, as a community, we have disenfranchised grief. We obviously, beyond that community, it's still there. But for us, we recognise that it's the same. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, we see it as the same.
And
I mean, we take an animal and we adopt or we purchase or whatever, wherever we get them from, we bring them into our home, and they're family. They are family. And actually, I just want to add the Canine Arthritis Management site. Anybody who has a dog, if you live in a modern house, you're going to have wooden floors, you're going to have tiles. Your dog is going to have arthritis at some point. You know, check out the website and prolong the life. Your dog more years is their slogan. So, you know, check it out.
Some of the things we've talked about makes me think that those people who have lost a dog must really suffer. I mean, they don't know. I mean, how do they grieve? When do they start their grieving? At what point do you accept that they've even gone missing and you might never see them again? That must be really...
That is kind of, I know we spoke about this the other day, myself, and we were saying, is that anticipatory, is that disenfranchised? I think it's more traumatic grief, kind of a trauma grief. I don't know where the dog is because has it been stolen, has it been killed, has it, you know?
Yeah, not knowing.
It's like awful. A missing person. I don't know how families kind of handle it when they see it on the news every night, looking for missing person, and even 20 years later, looking for missing person. There's no closure. How do you cope with that? I mean, that's when you really need to just go, it's okay. There are actually bereavement counsellors and support groups out there that appreciate and understand That, I mean, it's almost like kind of a Schrödinger theory. Are you grieving something that has passed, or are you grieving something that's alive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Wow. Amazing. So I think talking about those books, Denise, just going back to those, and also the links that you're going to share in the group. This is really important, because one of the things we talk about in human psychology a lot is the 3 C's. The first one is control, because the human brain likes to have control over things, have kind of control over outlook and output, and then things come along that we can't control, and of course loss is one of them. So then we go to the next C, which is change. We want to change that, and we can get stuck in change very easily. And then the final C is choice. It's being supported and reminded that we still have choice. We can choose what we do. We can choose to pick up that book. We can choose to contact that bereavement service. And actually going to choice brings us back to control again. We regain some control over something that has been taken from us. And I think one thing to think about with choice as well, just on a lighter side, I guess, is that Facebook is a good one for me. So the most recent dog we lost was Bertie. And when some of the memories came up with Bertie, the ones that I couldn't see, I knew I wasn't ready to see them. But when I was, and because you could not laugh or smile with his face, right, with some of the things he got into, I had that choice then to laugh and to allow myself to laugh and think, yeah, okay, I can look at those things now. And now those memories aren't quite so raw. They're not quite so difficult to kind of navigate. And we can miss those opportunities sometimes if we don't allow those thoughts and memories to come up. And Facebook does it for us, of course, I know. But
very bittersweet, aren't they?
Very bittersweet.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting over time, with Milo now, who's my soul dog, really. But it's been a while since Milo's gone. But I love it when his stuff comes up. I love the fact that I can share his face again and bear witness to him, because the reality is, in the great scheme of things, the vast majority of our companion animals, we are going to outlive them. So as soon as they come to us, there is always a recognition that's probably going to be the way, and we need to bear witness to their limited time here, and we need to allow those memories to be shared and talk. And quite often, I think it's always important to ask, isn't it? Because some people aren't ready to talk, but some people are desperate to talk about their dog. Yeah.
And over talking can be part of a difficult part of grief. You're covering things by just talking. You're not necessarily getting to the crux of the matter. So I think what you do need to recognize is if somebody is almost oversharing, that maybe they want to talk in more depth and actually covering the feelings behind it. So I think that's another one as well that we need to be aware of.
And the other thing that I find people often doing is, like, somebody says, oh, this happened, and then this happened to me. It's like, don't compare traumas.
No, don't try and trump.
Don't. It's not about you.
For sure.
Yeah. And again, that's human nature.
It is. Yeah. It is.
Well, it's been really a really wonderful discussion, both of you. I really appreciate it. I know many in the group as well. There's quite a lot of discussion going on in the group, and I think, perhaps if you have time later and you want to have a look through and just have a look at that and leave any comments there for people as you can. But and we're definitely going to share the resources, so we'll get the resources listed in this thread for those who have come later to the conversation. The conversation will be up on YouTube soon, so you can have a look at the bits if you've come in kind of halfway through. We'll also do an extra post in the group with some of the resources, and I think it might be worth just doing another little follow-up post in a few days' time. I'll do this, of course, just kind of being there, and then we'll make sure we have something put in the file section that we can keep adding to when more resources become available, really. But well, I thank you so much, both of you, for tonight.
We really appreciate it. The hour just flew through. I mean, this is one of those things that you would literally need hours and hours and hours to kind of discuss. But and I think thank you for having us on.
The main thing for tonight really was just us having a chat and the people kind of being part of that, because it wasn't we didn't want it to be a presentation on bereavement. It was a conversation on it, and I think especially for a lot of people, just hearing people talk and talk openly is very important. I know that Interdogs do a bereavement service and there's information there. So where can people find that?
You can actually find it on Facebook. We have a Facebook page that I will pop on the group under this thread, and our new Facebook or our new website will be up soon. We have 3 support people. It'd be June, Dean Marks and Jeremy Fraser. Jeremy is in Australia, so if you are struggling for time, you can do out of hours with Jeremy. The first kind of call is kind of free. It's first 15-20 minutes where you can just open up to one of our counselors. They will kind of assess what type of grief you're going through and what stage you're at, and point you in the direction. Do you need to just read books? Do you need to further on? Do you need something more advanced? And then there's kind of a nominal fee after that. But we have this open to everybody. It's not just to dog trainers. It's kind of the reason we set this up is that we wanted all our trainers and behaviourists who are put in a position with clients where a dog is coming to end of life or something, that they can refer their client to somebody they trust, which would be Interdogs if they're a member or whatever. So that's going to come up very soon, because I think we really need to normalize bereavement. There's so many courses coming up. There's so many people popping up, acting as counsellors and all, but, you know, and like the dog industry, there's no regulation with counselling. So.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you both very much for this evening. And just to let everybody know, the next live chat in the group is on Sunday with a horse-centered care special. Just a little one. You mentioned earlier about animal communication, which is a topic that is of interest to some and not to others. I understand that. But we have the amazing Lauren McCall, who many people will know her from her T-Touch work, who is also now a published author on animal communication. So for those who are interested, especially those who feel they might take some comfort from that, especially after our conversation today, then Lauren is coming into the group. I shall let you know right now. Yeah. Lauren will be in the group where I can't find it here. I can't see it off the top of my head. There you go. Oh, there we go. Yeah, May the 27th. May the 27th, 7 o'clock. Lauren McCall, who's written a book on animal communication and for a T-Touch. Great. Thank you very much, Denise and June. You have a good evening, and thank you everybody for listening today.
Okay, thank you. And if anybody does want to just shout out, just let us know, and we'll send you the link for the Interdogs page. Okay. Great. Right, thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.